Sometimes the greatest mistake a person can make is believing they already know who deserves respect. The executive lobby of Holloway National Bank had always been designed to impress. Floor-to-ceiling windows welcomed the morning sunlight, reflecting across polished marble floors that looked almost untouched beneath the steady rhythm of expensive leather shoes. Clients spoke quietly with personal bankers, financial advisors escorted investors toward private conference rooms, and the soft sound of a grand piano drifted through the spacious atrium, creating an atmosphere where confidence felt as valuable as money itself. It was nearly 10 o'clock on a clear Thursday morning when everything changed. Marcus Holloway stepped through the executive entrance carrying nothing more than a slim leather portfolio and a simple paper coffee cup. At 46 years old, the founder and chief executive officer of the bank moved with the calm confidence of someone who never believed authority needed to announce itself. His tailored navy suit was elegant but understated, his white dress shirt remained open at the collar without a tie, and there was nothing about his appearance that demanded attention beyond quiet professionalism. He preferred it that way. Most employees expected their chief executive to arrive surrounded by assistants, security personnel, or luxury vehicles. Instead, Marcus often visited branches alone because the truth was easier to discover when no one realized who was watching. This morning was no different. As Marcus approached the secured executive corridor, he raised his access card toward the electronic reader. A brief red light flashed instead of green. He paused for a moment, glanced at the screen, and calmly tried again. The same red light appeared, followed by a soft electronic tone that echoed farther than it should have inside the quiet lobby. Before Marcus could reach for his phone, a young security officer hurried toward him with visible uncertainty written across his face. Caleb Price had only worked at the bank for 3 weeks, and every decision still carried the nervous weight of proving himself. "Good morning, sir," Caleb said politely. "I am sorry, but your access card is not being recognized." Marcus offered a reassuring smile instead of frustration. "Technology has difficult mornings too," he replied. "Could you contact Elena Torres and let her know Marcus Holloway is here?" Caleb hesitated. The name sounded familiar, but before he could process it, another voice interrupted from behind. "Step away from the restricted entrance, sir." The atmosphere inside the lobby changed immediately. Conversations faded. Several customers looked toward the executive hallway while employees exchanged uncertain glances. Officer Daniel Mercer walked forward with measured confidence, his dark blue police uniform perfectly pressed, his badge reflecting beneath the bright lobby lights. His square jaw remained tight, his expression carried absolute certainty, and his eyes settled on Marcus before examining anything else around him. "We received a report about someone attempting unauthorized access," Mercer said firmly. Marcus remained exactly where he stood, keeping both hands visible around the coffee cup and leather portfolio. "There has been a misunderstanding, officer. My access card appears to be malfunctioning." Mercer looked briefly at the card before returning his attention to Marcus. "Everyone says there has been a misunderstanding," he replied. Marcus nodded once. "Then perhaps someone from executive administration can clear it up in less than a minute." Mercer folded his arms. "Executive administration is busy. Until I determine otherwise, you are not entering this area." A few employees quietly recognized Marcus, but froze where they stood, uncertain whether speaking would make the situation worse. Marcus noticed every expression without showing the slightest frustration. Instead, his eyes slowly lifted toward one of the security cameras mounted above the marble entrance. He studied the blinking recording light for just a second before looking toward Elena's office corridor, knowing she would eventually arrive. Then, with complete composure, he asked the single question that no one else in the lobby understood. "Is the recording system still running?" 3 hours earlier, the city was only beginning to settle into another busy business morning, and the headquarters of Holloway National Bank reflected the steady confidence that had taken decades to build. The glass tower rose above the surrounding streets like a promise of opportunity, its polished exterior catching the first bright rays of sunlight while hundreds of employees prepared for another day serving thousands of customers. Inside the executive conference room on the 32nd floor, a presentation waited on a large display screen announcing a new community investment initiative worth $100 million. The program would provide affordable financing to small businesses across neighborhoods that had historically struggled to obtain fair access to capital. Reporters were expected later that afternoon. Members of the board had already confirmed their attendance, and every department had spent months preparing for the announcement. Yet the man responsible for the entire project was nowhere near the executive floor. Marcus Holloway believed leadership could not be measured from behind polished conference tables alone. For years, he had quietly visited different branches without notifying local management, observing how employees treated ordinary customers when they believed no executive was watching. Those unexpected visits had uncovered small problems that expensive audits never found, and they had also revealed acts of kindness that deserved recognition. This morning would follow the same tradition. Marcus left his downtown apartment shortly after sunrise, driving his own modest sedan instead of using the company's chauffeured vehicle. He stopped at a neighborhood coffee shop where the owner greeted him by his first name, accepted a plain paper cup of black coffee, and spent several minutes speaking with two local business owners about rising operating costs. Marcus listened far more than he spoke. He understood that numbers inside financial reports represented real families, real dreams, and real struggles. That simple belief had shaped every major decision since he founded the bank nearly 20 years earlier. Before leaving, he checked a brief message from Elena Torres confirming that the branch security software had completed a scheduled overnight update. Everything should be running normally by the time he arrived. Marcus smiled, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and continued toward the headquarters without another thought. Unknown to him, the software update had delayed synchronization between several executive access cards and the building's security network. The information technology department had already identified the problem and expected to resolve it before lunch, but the notification had not yet reached every security station inside the building. At the same time, Caleb Price reported for another probationary shift, determined to prove he deserved a permanent position. Every supervisor had reminded him that executive security required absolute attention because high-profile financial institutions could never afford unnecessary risks. Caleb repeated those instructions in his mind while reviewing visitor procedures and emergency contact lists. Across another office, Operations Manager Warren Pike watched preparations for the afternoon announcement with growing anxiety. Internal financial reviews scheduled for the following week threatened to expose several unauthorized service fee adjustments that had quietly benefited his division's performance reports. He knew Marcus personally approved surprise inspections, and the possibility of the chief executive arriving unexpectedly unsettled him far more than he admitted. Looking through the lobby cameras, Warren noticed a distinguished black businessman approaching the executive entrance alone without assistance or public recognition. Instead of recognizing the founder whose portrait hung prominently in the annual shareholder report, Warren saw only an unexpected complication arriving at exactly the wrong moment. He quietly advised Caleb over the internal communication system to be especially alert because someone unfamiliar appeared to be attempting access to the executive corridor. Caleb accepted the warning without questioning its source. Minutes later, a single access card failed to register, a cautious security officer became uncertain, and one routine call requesting police assistance quietly set in motion a chain of decisions that would soon force an entire institution to confront the difference between suspicion and truth. The blinking red light above the access reader seemed insignificant, yet it quietly divided the morning into two different stories. One belonged to Marcus Holloway, who saw a routine technical problem that could be solved with a simple conversation. The other belonged to the people around him, who had already begun filling empty spaces with assumptions. Caleb Price shifted nervously beside the executive entrance, his hand resting near the security radio clipped to his jacket. Every instruction from his training echoed inside his mind. Protect the building. Verify every unusual situation. Never ignore restricted access alerts. He wanted to do everything correctly, and that desire slowly replaced confidence with hesitation. Marcus noticed the uncertainty on the young man's face and offered another calm smile. "There is no need to worry," Marcus said softly. "Elena Torres will recognize me immediately." Caleb opened his communication tablet, searching through contact options while trying to remember whether executives were supposed to be contacted directly during security events. Before he could decide, Warren Pike's voice arrived through the internal communication channel, controlled and confident. "Caleb, keep the individual away from the executive corridor until law enforcement arrives. Do not take unnecessary risks." Caleb glanced once more toward Marcus, whose relaxed posture did not resemble the threatening situation described over the radio. Even so, Warren held a management position, and Caleb believed following instructions would protect both his job and the bank. Across the lobby, customers continued entering through the revolving doors while employees quietly exchanged uncertain looks. Some recognized Marcus immediately but hesitated. Others simply assumed security was handling an ordinary matter. The silence grew heavier with every passing second because no one wanted to interrupt an active police response. Imagine standing inside a building you spent 2 decades creating while complete strangers debated whether you belonged there. Imagine realizing that the walls carrying your name could not protect you from assumptions made before anyone asked a simple question. Marcus had experienced enough success to understand that titles never erased prejudice. They only delayed it until someone decided not to believe the evidence standing in front of them. Outside, Officer Daniel Mercer parked his patrol vehicle beside the front entrance after receiving the dispatch call describing an individual attempting unauthorized access to executive offices inside a major financial institution. The information reaching him was brief, incomplete, and influenced by assumptions already forming inside the building. As Mercer adjusted his duty radio, dispatch informed him that private security had requested immediate assistance because an unidentified man continued insisting he belonged inside restricted executive space. Mercer stepped confidently through the glass entrance, immediately scanning the spacious lobby with experienced eyes. He saw expensive marble floors, nervous employees, a concerned young security officer, and a well-dressed black businessman standing near the executive access point holding a leather portfolio and a paper coffee cup. Instead of seeing a respected professional waiting for clarification, Mercer unconsciously connected the limited information he had received with the person standing before him. He never asked himself whether the original report might be incomplete. He never wondered why the man remained perfectly calm instead of attempting to leave. His conclusion arrived before his first question. "Good morning," Mercer said firmly while approaching. "I need you to remain exactly where you are until we sort this out." Marcus turned toward him with steady eyes and an expression that revealed neither fear nor anger. "Good morning, officer. I have been trying to explain that my access card stopped working after what appears to be a system update." Mercer briefly accepted the access card, looked at it for barely a moment, then returned it without checking the executive database available through his patrol computer. He believed the situation had already explained itself. Around them, dozens of quiet witnesses watched 2 men standing only a few feet apart beneath the polished bank logo mounted high above the lobby, unaware that every word, every expression, and every decision had already been preserved by the security cameras Marcus had noticed long before anyone else realized how important they would soon become. Officer Daniel Mercer slowly circled Marcus Holloway with the confidence of someone who believed experience had already answered every important question before the conversation truly began. Around them, the elegant lobby no longer felt like a financial institution. It felt like a room waiting for someone to decide which version of the truth deserved to survive. Customers paused beside marble columns, financial advisors lowered their voices, and receptionists exchanged uncertain glances without daring to interrupt the unfolding encounter. The quiet piano music that had welcomed visitors only minutes earlier now sounded strangely distant beneath the growing weight of silence. Mercer looked again at the executive access card in his hand before returning it without scanning the identification number into his patrol computer. A complete verification would have taken less than 30 seconds, yet he never reached for the keyboard mounted inside his patrol vehicle just outside the entrance. Instead, He relied on what he believed his instincts were already telling him. "You are saying this restricted access belongs to you," Mercer said with a measured but unmistakably skeptical tone. Marcus answered without raising his voice. "I am saying the card belongs to me, and someone from executive administration can confirm that immediately." Mercer shook his head slightly. "Everybody has an explanation after an access alert." Marcus remained composed. "Then let us verify the facts before we create conclusions." The sentence lingered in the air, but it did not change Mercer's posture. He folded his arms and glanced toward Caleb. "Did anyone from management identify this gentleman before calling?" Caleb hesitated. He wanted to answer honestly, but Warren Pike's earlier instructions echoed inside his thoughts. "I was told to secure the executive entrance until law enforcement arrived," Caleb admitted carefully. Mercer nodded once, interpreting hesitation as confirmation rather than uncertainty. Across the lobby, two senior relationship managers quietly recognized Marcus from quarterly leadership meetings. One of them instinctively stepped forward before stopping halfway. The other gently touched her arm, silently reminding her that interrupting an active police investigation could create even greater confusion. Imagine watching someone you respect stand only a few feet away while uncertainty quietly convinces everyone else to remain silent. Sometimes fear does not shout. Sometimes it simply persuades good people to wait 1 minute too long. Marcus understood that silence better than anyone in the room. During his career, he had entered boardrooms filled with investors who questioned his vision before hearing his first presentation. He had learned long ago that frustration rarely changes minds already committed to their own assumptions. Facts do. Evidence does. Time does. He calmly placed his coffee cup on a nearby reception counter before removing a slim leather business card holder from his portfolio. He extended a professionally printed executive business card toward Mercer. The card displayed his full name, his title as founder and chief executive officer, the bank headquarters address, direct executive contact numbers, and the official corporate seal embossed across the lower corner. Mercer accepted the card, studied it briefly, then looked back at Marcus without changing expression. "Nice printing," he remarked. "Those can be ordered online these days." A quiet murmur passed through several employees standing nearby. Marcus slowly returned the card to its holder. "If you would rather not rely on printed identification, please contact Elena Torres in Executive Operations. She has worked beside me for 12 years. Mercer answered almost immediately. "Executive staff will not determine how I conduct a security response. I will finish my assessment first." High above them, the small recording indicator beside each security camera continued blinking with steady consistency, preserving every word exactly as it happened. Marcus noticed the lights once more before turning his attention back to Mercer. There was no anger in his expression, only patience. Then he asked one final question with complete calm. "Officer, before this goes any further, would you be willing to verify the facts before deciding who belongs inside this building?" Mercer remained silent for a brief moment, but the answer resting behind his eyes suggested he believed that decision had already been made long before the first fact had ever been checked. The lobby remained frozen in a silence that grew heavier with every passing second. It was no longer the kind of silence found inside a prestigious financial institution where important decisions were made behind polished glass walls. It was the silence of people watching a moment unfold without knowing whether they should speak or stay still. Marcus Holloway stood exactly where he had been from the beginning, his leather portfolio resting beside his polished shoes, his coffee untouched on the reception counter, his posture steady enough to suggest that patience often carried more strength than argument. Officer Daniel Mercer interpreted that calm differently. To him, the absence of panic looked like practiced confidence rather than honesty. He had already convinced himself that hesitation from the surrounding employees proved uncertainty about the man's identity instead of fear of interrupting the situation. Sometimes the most dangerous assumption is not the first one. It is every assumption that follows because no one pauses long enough to verify the first. Mercer looked toward the gathering employees and raised his voice just enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Until I complete my assessment, no one is to escort this gentleman into any restricted area." Please allow law enforcement to handle the situation. Several customers exchanged uncomfortable glances before quietly returning their attention to the unfolding scene. A young financial advisor recognized Marcus almost immediately from company leadership broadcasts displayed during quarterly meetings. She instinctively stepped forward before Warren Pike appeared beside her with a reassuring but carefully controlled smile. "Let the officer finish his job," Warren whispered. "We do not want anyone interfering with an active security matter." His words sounded reasonable, yet they quietly achieved exactly what he wanted. Every employee who might have corrected the misunderstanding remained silent a little longer. Marcus noticed Warren standing among the observers, and for the first time that morning their eyes briefly met across the lobby. Warren offered a polite nod before quickly looking away. Marcus said nothing. He simply remembered the moment. Imagine watching dozens of people who know the truth while uncertainty convinces every one of them to wait for someone else to speak first. That is how simple misunderstandings become public humiliations. Not because everyone agrees with them, but because everyone hopes another person will stop them. At that exact moment, the revolving glass doors opened once again, and a young woman carrying a slim laptop case stepped into the lobby. Nina Holloway had planned to surprise her father before the afternoon announcement so they could share lunch together as they often did before major company events. She immediately recognized Marcus standing beside the executive entrance, surrounded by employees, security personnel, and a uniformed officer. Confusion crossed her face before concern quietly replaced it. She started walking toward her father, but one of the reception associates gently stepped into her path. "I am sorry, ma'am. We are dealing with a security situation right now." Nina looked beyond the receptionist toward Marcus, who gave her an almost imperceptible shake of his head. It was not fear. It was a silent request for patience. She stopped immediately, trusting that signal because she had seen it throughout her life whenever her father believed emotions would only distract from facts. Nearby, Elena Torres finally stepped out of an elevator carrying presentation materials for the afternoon board meeting. As the doors opened, she heard fragments of unfamiliar conversation echoing across the marble lobby. She looked toward the executive entrance and instantly recognized Marcus standing exactly where he should never have been standing. Before she could move through the growing crowd, Marcus lifted his eyes toward her. Their expressions met for only a brief second. Then, with complete composure, Marcus spoke clearly enough for Elena, the employees, and Officer Mercer to hear every word. "Elena, before anyone says another sentence, please make certain every security camera recording from this morning is preserved exactly as it is. Do not allow a single minute to be overwritten." The request seemed strangely specific to everyone except Marcus, because unlike anyone else in the lobby, he already understood that before the truth could change anyone's mind, it would first need a witness that never blinked, never assumed, and never forgot. Elena Torres stopped only long enough to place the presentation folder on the nearest reception desk before walking calmly toward the executive entrance. Unlike everyone else in the lobby, she did not hesitate because she knew exactly who stood only a few yards away. Her expression remained professional, yet there was unmistakable urgency in her eyes. Officer Mercer noticed her approaching and raised one hand before she reached Marcus. "Ma'am, please remain where you are until I finish this investigation." Elena met his gaze without raising her voice. "Officer, I am the Chief Operations Officer of this institution, and I need to speak with the gentleman standing beside you." Mercer answered immediately. "You may speak with him after I determine why he attempted to enter a restricted area." Elena glanced toward Marcus, expecting him to correct the misunderstanding himself, but he simply gave a slight shake of his head. She understood immediately. Marcus wanted every decision to unfold exactly as it naturally would, without anyone claiming afterward that influence had changed the outcome. Imagine realizing that the easiest solution is only a few words away, yet choosing patience because the truth deserves to be revealed without shortcuts. That kind of restraint cannot be taught in business school or law enforcement training. It comes only from experience. Marcus looked toward Elena and spoke with the same calm voice he had maintained since the first moment his access card failed. Elena, thank you for coming. I have one request. Please preserve every camera recording beginning 1 hour before my arrival. Include the executive corridor, the main lobby, every entrance, and every audio record that policy allows. Elena nodded immediately. It will be done. Mercer frowned slightly. This is still an active police matter. Evidence preservation will follow our procedures. Marcus looked directly at him. I agree completely, officer. Evidence should always be protected. That is exactly why I requested it before anyone has an opportunity to question what happened here. The sentence settled over the lobby with unexpected weight. Several employees quietly exchanged glances. They realized Marcus was not preparing for an argument. He was preparing for accountability. At that same moment, Marcus's phone vibrated inside his jacket pocket for the third time that morning. The screen briefly displayed calls from members of the board of directors waiting upstairs for the strategy meeting. Mercer noticed the movement. I need you to leave the phone where it is until I finish asking questions. Marcus slowly removed his empty hand from his pocket without protest. That is acceptable, he replied. A few moments later the phone vibrated again. Then again. Mercer looked increasingly convinced that the repeated calls somehow strengthened his own suspicions rather than weakening them. Across the lobby, Warren Pike watched quietly from behind a decorative marble column. The longer the misunderstanding continued, the less likely anyone would notice that several executive reports remained unfinished upstairs. His attention stayed fixed on Marcus, but his concern had nothing to do with security. It had everything to do with avoiding the internal financial review scheduled for the following week. Marcus finally spoke again after another long silence. Officer Mercer, may I ask for one reasonable accommodation? Mercer folded his arms. What is it? I would like permission to make one phone call before this situation continues any further. Mercer studied him for several seconds. He believed the request would accomplish nothing. Whoever this man intended to call could not possibly change the facts already established in his own mind. One call, Mercer answered at last. Keep it brief. Marcus nodded once, slowly reached into his jacket, removed his phone, and calmly selected a single contact that almost no one in the lobby could see. The name displayed across the screen read Chief Rebecca Lawson. Marcus waited as the phone began to ring, his expression never changing, while everyone around him still believed the next few seconds would simply become another failed attempt to convince someone who had already decided not to listen. The ringing lasted only a few seconds, yet to everyone standing in the lobby it seemed much longer. Marcus Holloway held the phone at a comfortable distance, his expression unchanged, while Officer Daniel Mercer watched with folded arms, convinced that the conversation would accomplish nothing more than another attempt to delay an investigation. Around them, employees remained motionless, customers quietly abandoned their transactions, and even the steady rhythm of the lobby seemed to pause as if the building itself were waiting to hear who would answer. Then the call connected. Chief Rebecca Lawson's calm voice came through the speaker with quiet professionalism. Marcus, this is Rebecca Lawson. Is everything all right? Marcus answered with the same measured tone he had maintained since entering the building. Good morning, Chief. I apologize for interrupting your schedule. I am standing inside the executive lobby at Holloway National Bank. There appears to be a misunderstanding involving building access, and I would appreciate your assistance in preserving the facts before assumptions become official reports. There was a brief silence on the other end before Chief Lawson spoke again, this time with noticeable attention. Are you safe? I am completely safe, Marcus replied. I only need you to verify one thing. Please contact the Bank Security Command Center and request immediate preservation of every camera recording from this morning. I also ask that a field supervisor respond to review the situation in person. Officer Mercer listened carefully, still believing the caller was simply another acquaintance attempting to influence a routine police response. When Marcus ended the call, Mercer looked directly at him. Calling someone you know does not change my responsibility here. Marcus nodded respectfully. I would not expect it to. Facts should never depend on personal relationships. Less than 2 minutes later, Mercer's shoulder radio crackled to life. Officer Mercer, this is dispatch. Stand by for an administrative update. Mercer pressed the transmit button. Go ahead. Dispatch continued in a noticeably more formal tone. A supervisory lieutenant has been assigned to your location. In addition, the chief's office has requested that all body camera recordings remain active and that no evidence be altered or interrupted pending supervisory review. Mercer frowned slightly. Understood. Dispatch was not finished. One additional instruction. The individual at the center of the incident has been identified as Marcus Holloway, founder and chief executive officer of Holloway National Bank. Maintain a professional scene until your supervisor arrives. For the first time that morning, complete silence replaced every whisper inside the lobby. Caleb slowly lowered his eyes toward the marble floor. Elena closed them briefly before releasing a quiet breath she had been holding for several long minutes. Several employees looked toward Marcus with expressions that mixed relief, regret, and disbelief. Nina stood perfectly still near the reception area, watching her father remain exactly as calm after the announcement as he had been before it. Mercer did not immediately respond. His eyes shifted from Marcus to the bank logo mounted above the reception desk, then toward the framed photographs decorating the far wall. For the first time, he noticed a large portrait of Marcus Holloway standing beside members of the board during the opening ceremony of the headquarters several years earlier. The same face, the same calm expression. It had been visible from the beginning. Imagine discovering that the person you questioned had never hidden the truth. The evidence had surrounded you from the moment you arrived. It was not the truth that had been missing. It was the willingness to see it. Before anyone spoke again, Elena quietly addressed the room. Every recording has been secured exactly as requested. The executive server has locked today's footage from deletion or automatic overwrite. Marcus thanked her with a slight nod before turning back toward Mercer. His voice carried neither satisfaction nor anger. Officer, this situation is still being reviewed. I believe we should allow the facts to finish speaking before any of us reach conclusions. Mercer looked at Marcus for several long seconds without answering. The certainty that had guided every decision since entering the bank had begun to disappear, replaced by something far more difficult to carry. Doubt. The arrival of the supervising lieutenant transformed the atmosphere inside the lobby without a single raised voice. Lieutenant Harold Benson entered through the front doors carrying a digital incident tablet, acknowledging Officer Daniel Mercer with a brief nod before turning toward Marcus Holloway. Unlike everyone else who had arrived that morning, Benson did not begin with assumptions. He began with questions. Good morning, everyone, he said evenly. Before anyone speaks further, I want every fact documented exactly as it happened. His calm approach immediately changed the rhythm of the room. Employees who had remained silent finally relaxed enough to breathe. Customers quietly stepped farther aside while maintaining respectful distance. Elena Torres approached the lieutenant with a secure evidence envelope containing the official preservation confirmation from the bank's security department. Every camera recording requested by Mr. Holloway has been secured, she explained. No footage has been deleted, modified, or overwritten. Benson accepted the document with appreciation before looking toward Mercer. Officer, your body camera remains active? Yes, Lieutenant, Mercer answered. Good. Leave it running. Benson then turned toward Marcus. Mr. Holloway, thank you for remaining here. I understand you requested preservation of evidence before making any accusations. Marcus nodded. Facts protect everyone, Lieutenant, including people who make honest mistakes. That answer lingered in the room longer than anyone expected. Imagine being given the perfect opportunity to embarrass someone publicly and choosing fairness instead. That choice often reveals more character than victory itself. Benson began reviewing timestamps provided by the bank's security team. Within minutes, the first recordings appeared on a secure monitor inside the operations office adjacent to the lobby. The footage showed Marcus arriving alone exactly as described. It showed his access card failing after the software update. It showed him calmly requesting that Elena Torres be contacted. It showed no attempt to force entry, no raised voice, no threatening behavior, and no refusal to cooperate. Every minute confirmed what Marcus had said from the beginning. As additional records were examined, Another detail quietly emerged. The internal communication log revealed that Warren Pike had contacted Caleb Price immediately after the access card failed, instructing him to secure the area and suggesting that someone unfamiliar was attempting unauthorized entry. Benson looked toward Warren, who suddenly appeared far less confident than before. "Did you personally verify Mr. Holloway's identity before sending that instruction?" Benson asked. Warren hesitated. "I believed I was acting cautiously." Benson remained composed. "That was not my question. Did you verify his identity?" Warren lowered his eyes. "No, Lieutenant." Elena looked genuinely surprised. "Warren, you attended executive planning meetings with Marcus for years." Warren struggled to answer. I thought something felt unusual." Marcus quietly interrupted before embarrassment could become spectacle. "Lieutenant, I would ask that everyone remain focused on documented facts instead of emotions." Benson appreciated the request. "Exactly. We will let the evidence speak." The investigation continued for another hour. Body camera recordings matched the surveillance footage. Dispatch records confirmed every radio transmission. System logs verified the overnight software update that temporarily interrupted executive access cards. Piece by piece, uncertainty disappeared until only documented reality remained. Benson finally addressed Mercer with the same professionalism he had shown throughout the review. "Officer, based on the evidence currently available, this matter will be referred for administrative review through established departmental procedures. Your report, body camera footage, and all supporting materials will be submitted exactly as recorded." Mercer nodded slowly. The confidence that had once shaped every decision had been replaced by quiet reflection. Marcus stepped forward one final time before leaving the lobby. He extended his hand toward Benson first, thanking him for insisting that facts come before conclusions. Then he looked at Mercer without anger. "Officer, I hope today's lesson reaches farther than either of us. Verification is not a delay to justice. Verification is how justice begins." No one answered immediately. They did not need to. Every person standing beneath the marble ceiling understood that the cameras had preserved more than an incident. They had preserved the moment assumptions finally surrendered to truth. Several months passed before the official reviews reached their conclusion, and by then the story had grown far beyond a single morning inside the executive lobby. Internal Affairs completed its investigation using the preserved body camera recordings, dispatch communications, witness statements, and the bank's uninterrupted security footage. Independent reviewers concluded that established verification procedures had not been fully followed before critical assumptions shaped the response. The findings also revealed that Officer Daniel Mercer had previously received guidance concerning the importance of confirming identity through available resources before escalating routine access concerns. Following the department's formal disciplinary process, Mercer separated from law enforcement service, and the administrative determination affected his retirement benefits under the applicable departmental regulations. The outcome did not arrive because of a single telephone call. It arrived because documented evidence, established policy, and due process all pointed toward the same conclusion. Warren Pike faced a separate internal investigation after electronic records demonstrated that he had issued instructions based on speculation rather than verified information while attempting to divert attention from financial irregularities, already under review. His employment ended through the bank's own disciplinary procedures, and the relevant records were forwarded to the appropriate authorities for further evaluation. Caleb Price remained with the bank after accepting responsibility for acting without seeking additional verification. Instead of dismissing him, Marcus Holloway recommended continued mentoring and additional professional training, explaining that honest mistakes should become opportunities for growth when people accept accountability. Imagine having every reason to seek revenge, yet choosing to build something better instead. That choice rarely creates dramatic headlines, but it changes institutions in ways that punishment alone never can. On the morning the bank officially launched its $100 million community investment initiative, the same executive lobby looked remarkably different. Employees greeted customers with renewed confidence. Security personnel completed identity verification through updated procedures before making assumptions, and new training emphasized communication, evidence, and respect equally. Marcus entered through the front doors carrying another simple paper coffee cup just as he had months earlier. This time there were no cameras from the media waiting for him and no formal announcement marking his arrival. He preferred it that way. Elena Torres smiled as she walked beside him toward the executive corridor. The updated access system recognized his card immediately. The small green light illuminated above the reader, and the door opened quietly without hesitation. Marcus paused for only a moment before looking back across the lobby where Caleb was helping an elderly customer complete a routine transaction with patience and kindness. Nearby, Nina Holloway spoke with several young entrepreneurs who would become the first recipients of the bank's new small business program. Marcus realized the most meaningful victory had never been proving who he was. It was ensuring that the next person would not need an important title, a familiar face, or a direct line to the chief of police to receive basic fairness. Before stepping through the executive doorway, Marcus glanced once more toward the security cameras mounted high above the marble walls. Months earlier, they had quietly preserved a painful misunderstanding. Today, they watched over a workplace that had chosen to learn from it. Buildings can be renovated, policies can be rewritten, and technology can always be upgraded, but the strongest foundation any institution can possess is the willingness to replace assumptions with facts and prejudice with dignity. Long after reports are archived and names fade from memory, that lesson remains. A person's worth is never determined by who recognizes them. It is revealed by whether others choose to treat them with respect before they know who they are.